the Judgment Day, and essentially, for all intents and purposes, as I even heard this week from other people, Raw's version of the Bloodline, except for, unlike the Bloodline that is coming to a close, Judgment Day seems to be getting stronger. Now, just like the Bloodline, we saw some dissension this past week in the Bloodline between Finn Balor and Damian Priest, wondering if that was the end of that faction. But seems like they're on the same page. And I'm going to just kind of pose this question to you, Brandon, as we see the end of the Bloodline coming on SmackDown, with it seems to be Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns coming up for SummerSlam and the championship. Do you want to see the end of the Judgment Day at this point? Or, do you want to see them kind of take the opposite of what the Bloodline is doing and kind of take the reins when it comes to the number one intact faction in WWE?
I actually want them to keep going because, as you mentioned, the Bloodline is on its way out. Obviously, things have really dissolved pretty quickly here in the last few weeks. Things are just at the point where it's a point of no return. So for me, I like factions, but you can't have too many factions in WWE. It's just like, to me, you don't want to have everybody's in a group kind of a thing. Like, you want to have one or two that are like the badasses of the locker room, and for a while now it's been Judgment Day on one side, you got Blood on the other, and they happen to be on different shows, so they both run respectively Raw and SmackDown. Now, what I think is what WWE is going to do is they're going to let this Bloodline thing end. There's going to be a finality to it sooner rather than later. I think the Judgment Day, the way they're built, it's so cool because Roman Reigns is the tribal chief of the Bloodline. Mommy, aka Rhea Ripley, runs the Judgment Day. Like, she's pretty much like, we saw on Raw this past week. She is literally like, she's the ringleader. She runs that show, and she pretty much told those guys, start act right, pretty much. Let's get this figured out. We need to get on the same page. And guess what? When Rhea talks, when Mommy when Mommy speaks, you listen. And guess what? As you mentioned in the intro, they're whole. They're back to where they need to be. And the thing I like about what they're doing with Judgment Day is it's different. How many times have you seen in the history of WWE where a female is the leader of this group? She is, and it's so unique. It's so cool. And here's the thing: the fans love it. Like, she is so over, it's not even funny. Like, she demands respect everywhere she goes, and she's feared by so many of I wouldn't even say just the female competitors, but the male competitors as well, because she's a bad girl. She lays down the law. So for me, it's a different type of faction, and they bring a different element to the table. But I think the way WWE needs to do it, and I think what they're going to do is they're going to, Bloodline's going away, and I think Judgment Day is going to kind of take that torch as the number one faction in WWE. And I feel like they're going to run their course for a while. I think it's built that way. I feel like it's built to run for a while. I like these long storylines where, obviously Damian Priest and Finn Balor, they seem to have hashed things out. But let's be honest, it doesn't mean everything is all, perfect and rainbows and unicorns and all of that. I think eventually we're going to see it. It's going to ripple just like the Bloodline, but I think WWE is still going to draw it out just right. And I think what's going to happen is, I feel like the biggest thing is I think it's going to be surrounding whatever Damian Priest cashes in, because that right there, I think, sets the table for potential issues with Finn Balor. And then for Dominic Mysterio, I feel like eventually, I feel like he's going to have his own singles run eventually. I don't know when that's going to be, but he's nuclear heat right now. Like, we were there. We were in Buffalo this past week on Raw, and it's nuclear. Like, being there live and feeling it. He's like, and they didn't show it on camera, obviously, but we saw it in the crowd. He's flipping the crowd off. So that, it's so nuclear. He's eventually going to get his due, and I feel like Rhea's eventually is going to have her singles run again. And then I feel like Dom's going to do his thing, and then I do feel like it's going to dissolve. But for me, I think you have to keep it going at least till WrestleMania this coming year.
Yeah, and I don't mean to talk about the Judge Day in a way that it's just the newest hottest faction, but if you really think about it, I mean, it's we obviously seen some members switch here and there in the sense of pretty much just Edge, but the Judgment Day got established around WrestleMania of last year. So the Judgment Day isn't just this, hey, they just got together a month or two ago, they seem to be this hot thing. Are they the new Bloodline? Obviously, we know about the Bloodline and their legitimacy and their almost 3-year long run. But the Judgment Day is going on almost a year and a half. I mean, it was when Edge joined Damian Priest last year at WrestleMania that got this thing going. Edge actually, we thought the Judgment Day was going to be a short-lived faction because, I mean, we saw Edge leave the Judgment Day pretty soon thereafter. I want to say it was only maybe a month and a half or 2 months later that, he was kicked out once Rhea Ripley kind of joined in things. But they've been going strong ever since. Obviously, we saw Dominic Mysterio join the Judgment Day, which I think is clearly the savior of his career. I mean, I know a lot of people loved Ray and Dom teaming up, but I mean, as you were mentioning, I think this saved Dominic's career. Similar to how the Bloodline is making people look at Roman Reigns in a different light than they would have. I mean, Dominic Mysterio, he was on that, like, what is he doing here in WWE? I get it, you're Ray's son, but, I mean, you're taking someone's spot. And now with him in the Bloodline, or sorry, him in Judgment Day, I mean, since he's been there, now you see, that he belongs in WWE. Now you see that he belongs on the WrestleMania card. Because I tell you what, before, even when he was teaming up with his dad, I was just not feeling it. I was not a Dom fan. I was sitting here going, come on. It felt like Logan Paul. It felt like one of these celebrities that are just thrown out there, like when Snooki's out there and you're like, this is taking up WrestleMania time, for these people who don't belong here. And frankly, I get it. He's like I said, Ray's son, but just doesn't belong. But now he fully belongs. I mean, as you were talking about in Buffalo, and he belongs in WWE. This is something where now all of a sudden he is a legit WWE superstar. He's taking on Cody Rhodes at pay-per-views, and it doesn't seem completely out of left field. Looks like he's going to be taking on Wes Lee at the NXT Great American Bash as the Judgment Day showed up on NXT this past week. But yeah, they are running WWE for all intents and purposes right now while Bloodline is dissolving. The Judgment Day's running things, so much so, I mean, rarely, this was almost a first for me as we saw this past week on Monday Night Raw, but normally Raw goes off the air, and if it doesn't go off the air with a face, it goes off the arena with a face, meaning that I was full-heartedly expecting, one, the Judgment Day not to win in the main event, but then I was full-heartedly expecting for once TV cameras cut off for the good guys to get the last laugh and the music to be playing for Seth Rollins or Kevin Owens or Sami Zayn to end Monday Night Raw, but that wasn't the case. We left the arena silent while people walked out quietly as the Judgment Day were celebrating the quote-unquote heels. And I think that's a big thing, to send the crowd home, on the music of heels. And, Finn Balor, obviously, he's not necessarily the best version of Finn Balor we've ever seen. But, I think the Judgment Day right now is they're hot. I want to see them stay together. It would have been really cool, especially for like Survivor Series maybe, and it's kind of making me think that if Bloodline could have stuck around for just a few more months, and we, Survivor Series always is champion versus champion, Raw versus SmackDown, boy, I think the Judgment Day versus the Bloodline would have been, and with Rhea Ripley included in it, I mean, we're talking, kind of like a mixed tag. That would have been a pretty cool Survivor Series main event. With nothing on the line, just pride. And I would have liked that a lot. But obviously the Bloodline is coming to a close here. But yeah, no, the Judgment Day, they are, I'm hoping they get stronger. I'm hoping that they don't break up. I'm hoping this Finn Damian thing kind of plays itself out because we don't need to see two groups dissolving, close to the same time. I want to see one faction going really, really strong here. Obviously, Imperium's still going strong, but I don't think they hold a candle to the Judgment Day. I mean, we're talking 3 segments this week with the Judgment Day on Monday Night Raw, and I think we're getting to a point where we could start to see Judgment Day highlights on SmackDown, similar to how we're seeing Bloodline highlights on Raw. Yeah,
no, you're right. I mean, here, take a little step back. I was, as you were talking about, we were comparing the Bloodline and maybe a potential match if things could have played out where the factions were still together. The thing I will compare the two for is each member of that faction, and I don't even include Finn Balor. I disagree with a little bit of what you said about Finn Balor. I feel like every single one of those on both sides, Roman Reigns included, Rhea Ripley included, I feel like their careers have gotten the jolt that it needed. And I feel like that, like having like the point of factions for me, and I love that about factions, is if it's done right, it could be guys and girls that are maybe mid card, they're good, people like them, but what are they really doing? So why not put a bunch of decent people together and then make this really badass faction? And then what happens is you create, not only they come out of it as 4 stars, and then like in the bloodline you have stars right there as well. It's, to me, I love the way things have turned out for both factions. And to be honest, and this, some people, I don't know if, I think a lot of people agree with me on this. I think what the Judgment Day is what a lot of fans have wanted to see AJ Styles do with the club in WWE, and it hasn't happened. So maybe eventually, maybe the club will finally get some traction. They have their own little enforcer there with Mia Yim, but I feel like they're not getting out the gates really great. I feel like they haven't done a whole lot. And then going to Imperium's pretty damn good. I wouldn't say
they're they're not a super group, because we have a tag team, quote unquote, and then we got a head of the group. And that's the thing that's different with the Judgment Day here is, as you mentioned, we have like a full faction of individuals, like Evolution in the past, where you had Batista, Flair, and Orton, who could all stand on their own. I don't think, Imperium is looked at as Gunther and the guys. Judgment Day is, everybody's holding their own.
I'll throw a name at you just because we know Imperium is a very European group. I would love them to add somebody that's also a fellow European, and that's from NXT. He just picked up a great victory against Braun Breaker this past week. Ilya Dragunov. That dude, put him with Imperium. To me, it fits the bill. You're not just putting somebody who doesn't fit what they've already been doing. You're not going to put a non-European in a European group, because obviously we know the details. We know what. Let's see. Bartel is from Italy. Eichner is from Italy, and then Bartel is, well, now it's not Bartel, but what the heck's his name? The German guy. He's German. So you have the Italian, you have the German, and then you have the Austrian guy. You bring in the other European guy. To me it's money, and I think that's something they could do. Ilya Dragunov is a guy where he's legit. Like, he's a legit badass. Like, he's a very intense dude. And they put on a great match this past week on NXT. And he went over on Braun Breaker, which, how many people go over on Braun Breaker at all? I mean, especially in NXT. So that tells me what WWE thinks of him. I feel like you need to bring him in to the maybe to Imperium. I think it brings that cool factor in, and then you have 4 legit badasses. That would be cool, and that's another way to elevate even the other members of Imperium, because obviously we know Gunther, we know how he is, we know he's a badass, but why not the other guys? So to me, it's rising tides lift all ships. That's the perfect scenario. And unfortunately, like teams like the OC, like you even get like the Viking Raiders, even like little tag teams like that. Like, who's buying that? Like, nobody's buying that right now. Like, there's not that many teams in WWE that are legit, like the Judgment Day are and the Bloodline are. I would put Imperium in that category, and then that's pretty much it. I don't even think the club is that great either.
Here's a new match concept, and will end like the Judgment Day talk, and this is what I would maybe like to see at SummerSlam, because right now I notice we don't really have any clear-cut kind of things with certain matches. Obviously, Ricochet, Logan Paul, that's a for certain. Cody Rhodes and Brock Lesnar, that's a for certain. Raquel Rodriguez and Rhea Ripley. I mean, I feel like that's pretty for certain. If it's not a SummerSlam, it's going to be somewhere around, maybe the night before. So we have some.
I don't mean to cut you off. When I was talking about Imperium, I was going by their original names. I do that from time to time. So I was talking about Vinci. That's actually Fabian Eichner, and then Bartel is Ludwig Kaiser. I just wanted to button that up because I was going under their original names. And just like I did last week, I called Gunther Walter last week. So just wanted to clean it up because I like the original names better than what they have now.
It's okay. WWE screws it up all the time. They keep calling Walter Gunther. I don't know why they keep doing that. His name's Walter. They keep calling him Gunther, though. But how about this? And I'll throw this out to our Twitter sometime this week. And obviously, there's no way this will be posted before Raw, so there's no way we know kind of anything. And frankly, no one's even kind of hinted at really like what is in store for both Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, the tag champs, and Seth Rollins, other than this feud that's going on, but somehow, some way, it's going to lead to something for all of them at SummerSlam. How about this? 6-man tag at SummerSlam, similar to what we saw on Monday Night Raw, this time for all the gold. We haven't seen one of those matches in a long time. Whoever gets the pinfall gets the championship. Dom pins Kevin. He's a tag team champ with whichever party he chooses, and I think that would create a crazy dynamic right there, right? Let's say like Dom pins Sammy or Dom pins Kevin. They win the tag team belts. So Seth would keep his world title, but they would win the tag team belts. Who gets what belts? You know what I mean? He'd have to pick a tag team partner, and that'd create like that kind of awesomeness. Or let's just say Seth, Kevin, and Sammy get the win, and then as soon as the match is over, Damian Priest, like, screw you guys, cashes in, beats Seth, becomes the champion, and does that thing. But that would be either way. I want to see that. We haven't seen one of those all the gold matches in so long. We used to see him back, I think in 2001 was the last time we saw, when the two-man power trip, Triple H was the IC champion, Stone Cold the world champ. Then they beat the Brothers of Destruction and became the tag champs. They had all the gold. So that'd be a good 6-man tag. The tag team title on the line and the world heavyweight title on the line. 6-man tag. Whoever gets the pinfall wins that belt. And especially, too, with what's going on between Damian Priest and Finn Balor, and obviously creating, like, you know, are you with me, against me? Creating that kind of stipulation there at the end of, like, who's going to get the pinfall, and if you get the pinfall, who's going to be your tag team champion, who's going to be the world champion, that kind of thing. It creates some interesting dynamics, especially for SummerSlam. And right now, frankly, I don't know exactly. Are we just going to get a Finn Balor versus Seth? If that's not the case, I think this is a better option.
I think, and here's the other thing too to add to it. You always gotta factor in with the Money in the Bank briefcase with Damian Priest. Like, to me, like you have to. It doesn't matter what match you're putting him in. I love the all the golds match. I think those are matches that I'd like to see brought back. Not on a regular basis, but sprinkle it in from time to time. I've always liked that concept, so it'd be cool to see that.
And it fits the Judgment Day right now, because that's kind of their gimmick. I mean, we got Money in the Bank, and we got the women's champion in the group, right? So that's kind of fitting the gimmick right here. We're like, everybody's going to have gold, kind of thing.
Yeah,
similar to what we saw with the Bloodline, where everyone had gold in that.
I think it's very plausible to do that. Like, and that's another way to keep the group really going and keep the success rolling. Is how nuclear would it be if Dom gets the pinfall and he wins the tag championship? Like that nuclear heat is, you're gonna feel it if you're not there. You're gonna feel it on TV. It's gonna come right through the screen because nobody wants to see Dirty Dom, or as I like to call him, Dom Dom. You don't want to see him the belt. You know what I mean? Like, it's, to me, I think
as tag champs, Damian Priest with Money in the Bank, and Rhea as the women's champion.
And you let it ride.
It's pretty cool. See,
you let it ride. That's the thing. You let it ride, and and like you said, everybody's got gold. Everybody's got something. So for me, that's a good way to maybe keep that thing going longer.
It's also hard to see right now who would even be facing other than people out of the Judgment Day. Because, I mean, the tag team champions the last, year, obviously, with the Usos, have been these super teams. I mean, I don't see Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, two great individual wrestlers who beat the Usos in the main event of WrestleMania, just losing the belts to the Viking Raiders or something like that. They're going to have to lose to some other big super group that is like two individual stars teamed together.
Well, here's the thing. I think, and obviously it stays with the shtick of Dominic Mysterio and how the Judgment Day operates. We know on paper, Finn Balor and Dominic Mysterio versus Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, that's a mismatch. We all know that. But when you have Rhea and you have Damian Priest, lurking, you can have Dom win in a dirty way, Dirty Dom. He wins in a dirty fashion. They get the belts because of an assist from Rhea and Priest, or Priest, and then they get the belts, and then they can braggadocious their whole, I got the gold, this and that, and then maybe maybe there's a little issue between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn because we're going to get there again someday. Like it's gonna cycle through. It always does. That's what Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn have done for as long as I can remember. They're going to be boys for a bit, and then they're going to be arch enemies for a bit, and then slowly get back to being friends, be really good friends, do some business, and then they're going to do. It's cyclical. It's very predictable, but I'm all for it.
But right now, the Judgment Day is riding high, and like I said, for the first time in a minute, Monday Night Raw not just went off the air on television, but left the crowd going home with the heel faction standing tall. I don't really count the Bloodline necessarily as like a heel faction. They are, but outside of the Bloodline, we don't really see quote unquote heels, leaving the show, go off the air. But we did this past week with Judgment Day. We saw Seth Rollins, who was obviously very over, who's your World Heavyweight Champion, and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn just quietly go off as the Judgment Day took Monday Night Raw off the air on the road here to SummerSlam.